is that we need to be concerned about protecting people and not about beliefs or ideologies. And that, I think, was clear in an article by the Commissioner of the EHRC for Scotland in the Herald a couple of weeks ago. So that's by way of background. But on the specific question about intent and effect, I think that the amendment that has been announced by the Cabinet Secretary is retrograde. It essentially provides a get-out-of-jail-free card for something that you will see very often in hate-filled posts on the internet, that people, having posted their hatred, will then end their comments with just saying or just asking. And they are now given a get-out-of-jail-free card because they can say, well, we didn't intend to cause effect, to cause offence. We were merely asking a question about, for example, whether the Holocaust happened. Now, I speak here effectively on behalf of what you might think of as a collective victim group.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh. So this guy here, this is Abraham something. I can't see his second name properly because of the time bar on YouTube. He is from the Scottish Council of Jewish Communities. And he is one of some that were on this panel complaining about the discussions to to change the hate crime bill that Hamza Useless has proposed. And now they're talking about it has to be proven that you intended to stir up hate, instead of it just being a case of likely to stir up hate. Now, this individual here is not happy with that because that gives people a potential get-out-of-jail-free card. And, of course, you get the most extreme hypothetical that he can think of to try and prove his case and justify it. But a couple of questions. What happens if people genuinely are just asking questions? Is that not allowed? You know? What's hate? What's a hate-filled post? The example he gave was somebody questioning the Holocaust or one off those examples. And what's wrong with that? I mean, does that warrant a charge? I don't think so. Is that hate? Maybe in the eyes of him, but in the eyes of somebody else, maybe not. So again, it's subjective. But so he wants to take out the intent that has to be proven. So he wants to leave it as it was. But we could throw that right back at him, and how many people then would end up in the shit incorrectly when they genuinely weren't intending to stir up hatred, but because the likes of Abraham campaigned against this, they could face prosecution. And again, we're talking about a minority of people here that realistically send these hate-filled posts. I know that these marginalised quote-unquote groups like to pretend that they are eternal victims and every day is a struggle. And maybe it is when they live in a country where not everybody's identical to them. And you know that inferiority complex, etc. But the reality of the matter is we're talking about a fringe group of people that may genuinely say hateful comments with the intent to stir up hatred. So the rest of the country has to get shafted in the process if the likes of this individual had his way. Even Hamza Yusuf, he does not get any respect from me because at the end of the day, his initial bill still stated quite clearly that it would be whether or not you intended to stir up hatred. And there's still a hell of a lot wrong with that fucking bill.
Because unfortunately anti-Semitism is very much on the rise these days. And I take the view, therefore, that it's the victim who needs protected. Yes, freedom of speech is important, but there's a balancing exercise that needs to be done.
Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having me. I think I'd firstly like to echo a lot of what Ephraim has already said, particularly around the idea of intent. Now, we've already seen in the English and Welsh context since 2006 when intent was brought in for religiously aggravated offences, there's only actually been a handful of cases that have been successfully prosecuted. And that, unfortunately, is a large part due to how difficult it is to actually prove someone's intent in a court of law.
So let's get rid of intent, making it then for people. How difficult will it then become for people to prove that that wasn't their intent? If we scrap intent altogether, which the initial bill said, and leave it up to people to prove that that wasn't their intent, Or are we going to go back to how it was prior to that, where it doesn't matter if it was in your intent or not because you were hateful anyway?
Law, which puts the thresholds on as unworkably high, which would actually make a lot of the benefit that this bill brings redundant.
The benefits of the bill. Oh dear.
We are quite concerned about the inclusion of intent, but what we would say is that there are concerns surrounding freedom of expression, which do need to be addressed. So our recommendation for dealing with that is actually to look at definitions, look at what it means in terms of, for example, Islamophobia and other protected characteristics.
Oh, another protected characteristic. Every group bar white men, of course. But what does Islamophobia mean? What's a word they fucking made up for a starter? See, the Equality Act that they created and predicated on the back of the ideology that they're all espousing just now, social justice, etc., racism only goes one way, whiteness, etc., right? Now we're talking about Islamophobia. We need to look at the definitions. We need to cement them into law, these protected characteristics. Before these protected characteristics even existed, like, this wasn't a problem. So they create a list of protected characteristics. Now all of a sudden, hate crime's on the rise everywhere. So before the list, was that hate crime on the rise? You know? It's just what makes it different. I don't know. I'm going on a tangent. Sorry.
Characteristics in particular,
because that's fake too. That's my point. Yes, Islamophobia is fake, and protected characteristics are fake. They are picking and choosing what can be considered a protected characteristic, and it flies in the face of the equality that they claim they're trying to achieve, because it's immediately not equality or equal when you start to prioritise and give people preferential treatment over others, such in this instance cisgender, quote unquote, fucking white men. Yeah. Because even women are going to get a pass in this shit when they implement misogyny at a later date. It's just white men. That's not equal. Or is this some of this crap you're trying to right the wrongs? You're trying to level the playing field, quote unquote, because of the oppressors, the evil white man. He's protected. I'm sick of this crap from these people. I am sick of it.
Because as two examples, one concern would be an inability to criticize religion, for example. So there needs to be a definition of, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism. We've given guidelines on how to enact a robust policy applicable definition of Islamophobia, which would have to include.
Again, no. So somebody should be able to criticize religion if they want, but in the same token, somebody should be able to say that they dislike Muslims if they want. That shouldn't be a crime. Because fundamentally, what this is doing, in my view, what I think this is doing, it's a sinister undertone. You get the proverbial namby-pamby rhetoric that they always come out with. Oh, it's about, human rights and protecting the Muslims and all this crap. But beneath the surface, it's essentially what it's doing. It's verbally castrating the natives so they can't criticize what they're seeing in front of them. They can't criticize immigration. They can't criticize an influx of Muslim immigration. They can't criticize some of the pretty grotesque things that Muslims, for example, do. They have to essentially walk on eggshells, and the only thing that they'll be allowed to criticize is certain practices of their religion. They can't criticize them for the other shit that they do that's out with the context of what they claim in terms of, oh, well, not all Muslims do that in terms of terrorism. Or when they'll say, well, there's nothing in the Muslim context. It relates to raping women, etc. So we can't criticize them for that. You can criticize them for anything that they've done in their little holy book, but you can't criticize them for anything else.
Include a clause on the exemption of criticizing religion as being outside of the realms of Islamophobia. Another example that I know is causing communities a lot of concern is the idea, the freedom of religious expression particularly within religious texts, and freedom of belief surrounding issues such as sexual preferences, for example. So
we're getting off topic here. This is boring. Anyway, dearie me. So Hamza Yusuf, to build a safer nation, we must confront hate crime. To build a safer nation. Mm-hmm. So it says here that, and he's writing in The National, his comments, confronting hate crime is central to building the safer, stronger and inclusive Scotland that we all want to see. Well, you could have fooled me, Hamza, because as far as I can tell, there's only a certain demographic of people, mainly from the SNP's camp and other left-wing arseholes, and maybe the activist minority groups that would consider wanting to see a safer Scotland. But if you asked me, I don't really want to see this inclusive, welcoming nation you speak of. Nonetheless, a Scotland that is free from hatred, prejudice, discrimination, and bigotry. It's remarkable that this man who comes from a country, he might have been born here, but he originates from a country that on the regular gets accused of persecuting Christians. You know, and it's funny as well, he's still yammering on after all the backlash that he received for his comments that I uploaded to my channel, or a little clip of it anyway, of him talking about saying particular things in the home and how the Dwelling Defence Act shouldn't be taken into consideration, essentially. He's still at it. The Hate Crime and Public Order Bill looks to consolidate and reform existing hate crime law, ensuring it is fit for the 21st century, giving sufficient protection to those who need it. In recent weeks, the Justice Committee has taken evidence from a number of organisations as they progress their important scrutiny of the legislation this bill raises. Issues relating to freedom of expression, which is a fundamental right for us all, but that does not mean people can say or do whatever they want. Say or do, you mean say what they want, provided, of course, you're not inciting violence, threatening violence. That's something we would agree on. But you add in that little caveat of saying or do whatever they want. Saying and doing are two different things. Do suggests an action. Saying something is different. It's speech. You can't in the one breath say that it's a fundamental right for us all to have freedom of expression and or speech, but then in the next breath say, but that does not mean that people can say what they want. Everybody, for the most part, is in agreement that you should not be able to incite violence. But you should, if you wish to, be hateful, offensive, insultive. And again, people shouldn't be able to say or do what they want, according to who? Who determines what we can and can't say? Who determines what we do and cannot do? Hamza Yusuf in this instance. There should be limits, including when hateful speech. But again, who determines what's hateful speech? I mean, I could sit here all day and pick this shit apart. But I mean, anybody watching this video knows it's as ludicrous as I do. It's used to incite criminal behaviour motivated by prejudice. Hateful speech is used to incite criminal behaviour motivated by prejudice. Recent discussion is focused on the dwelling defence and whether hateful views intended to stir up hatred expressed in a house or home should be exempt from criminal law. It would be very challenging for someone to be able to stir up hatred in their own home. However, if someone does manage this, if someone does manage this by behaving in a threatening or abusive way with the intention of stirring up hatred in others, and that intent must be proven beyond reasonable doubt, well, if he puts that in brackets, that makes it okay. Why should the criminal law provide an exemption when the same conduct on, say, the street, in a pub, or in your front garden would be subject to criminal sanction? Because it's in your fucking house. I mean, where's your elaboration on what this could mean? Like, example-wise? I mean, this is ridiculous. This is what-ifs. It's ifs and buts. It's hypotheticals. And realistically, that's what a lot of this boils down to. You're wanting to create a bill and sanction certain elements of speech, etc., and it's all predicated on hypotheticals and what-ifs. You have to put these little caveats in. All over the joint. I've got the corona. On this particular issue, I welcome the evidence from the Law Society of Scotland and Faculty of Advocates with Michael Clancy of the Law Society observing the dwelling is no sanctuary for most criminal law, and I don't think there should be a sanctuary for when it comes to hate speech. I have acknowledged concerns over freedom of expression as we seek to find the right balance, protection of freedom of expression and protection of victims of hate crime are not mutually exclusive things. Oh my god. I mean, as a blanket, as an umbrella term even, hate crime, because that could be, as I said, doing something to somebody, like physically, because of who they are, via their protected characteristics, etc., or it's saying something. We're talking about hate speech here. Stop conflating the two things, eh? In September, I announced the government's intention to lodge Stage 2 amendments to make the bill's new stirring up hatred offences intent only. The fundamental change provides necessary reassurance, and I have made clear to the Justice Committee last month I am open-minded as to the need to consider further changes, and I am sure the Justice Committee's robust examination will help inform consideration of such changes. Yesterday's session saw much debate on artistic, journalistic and religious freedom of expression, with the Scottish Council of Jewish Communities voicing concerns that moving to intent only for the new stirring up offences may have gone too far. This highlights the breadth of opinion in the bill, and we will continue in our efforts to try and strike the right balance between protection for victims and freedom of expression. Amid this scrutiny, we have to remember the core purposes of this legislation: protection for victims of hate crime. Hate crime has a corrosive and insidious effect and makes people, either individually or those who are part of racial, religious, or other groups, feel worthless and frightened. This is all anecdotal. Over-dramatised, manipulative, anecdotal shit. As views are being offered and the content of the bill are being expressed, I will continue to listen to victims and ensure their voice is at the centre of the process of making this hate crime bill an essential part of the approach in Scotland. But see, you are focusing, and he continues to do this. He tries to make you empathise with the so-called victims that he's trying to protect. What about the general fucking public that are having their speech curtailed? What about them? Do they not get a say in the matter? Because in order for you to protect or avoid the minuscule amount of hate incidents that occur, the majority of the public that don't get involved in such things are still going to be shafted regardless. It doesn't matter what amendments you make. The fact of the matter is that this bill is open to interpretation in so many levels. The fact of the matter is that, irrespective of whether or not that they remove the clause of intent only, it still leaves the door open for abusive and threatening, etc., which is still considered hate or a criminal offence in the eyes of these individuals.